let's do this Social Security thing. On my Jubilee debate, as I want to do in really any circumstance, I wanted to talk about Social Security. And part of that reason why I want to do that is because so many people, broadly speaking, not just Republicans, Trump supporters like these guys, have complete misunderstanding about Social Security. This was recorded back in January before, when there was no talk of cutting Social Security. Donald Trump said, I'm never going to touch Social Security. I'm never going to touch Social Security. Here is Elon Musk, Monday, on Larry Kudlow's program, talking about how all of a sudden there's this huge fraud and waste in Social Security that nobody seems to have known about.
Go another year?
Yeah, I think so.
Final report, middle of next year?
Well, we're just getting things done as opposed to writing a report. Like say,
pause it. You hear that? Larry Kudlow thought that there was going to be a report, that they were actually studying whether there was fraud and waste and abuse and this and that. Like, have you actually assessed this? And Musk is just saying, oh, we're not assessing anything. We're going in with an assumption. Well, this is how they justify it. Look, the bottom line is, in Project 2025, back in 2023, Donald Trump was talking about how he didn't have to follow the Impoundment Control Act. Project 2025 wrote up this plan a year ago, but there's been, what's his face? Ding Dong, Rick Perry was talking about cutting 3 agencies. I can't remember the third. This is just knee-jerk republicanism. The only difference is that Musk has so much money that he's making the power in the Republican lawmakers keep quiet about what he's doing. And they seem impervious to or don't care about public opinion. And so they're just going in to cut. And then, this is the ultimate shoot first, ask questions later. And Kudlow thinks there's going to be a report. Oh, no, we don't account for things. We just put stuff up on a website and then take it down as it's wrong.
Final report, middle of next year?
Well, we're just getting things done as opposed to writing a report. Like say, reports don't mean anything. You got to actually take action. The waste report in entitlement spending, which is which is most of the federal spending is entitlements. That's like the big one to eliminate, because that's the sort of $500 billion, maybe $600-700 billion a year. That is also a mechanism by which the Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here, yes, and then turning them into voters.
Yes.
So this is why the Democrats are so upset about the situation.
Okay, this is such an unmitigated lie, it's hard to express. First off, he's talking about cutting it because supposedly there are undocumented immigrants who are getting Social Security, what he calls entitlements. The fact is that immigrants, undocumented immigrants, pay anywhere between $25 billion and $60 billion into Social Security. How do they do this? They use fake Social Security numbers, and oddly enough, and most efficiently, the government, when you pay taxes, or when they withhold taxes from you, or when the employer pays taxes because you're doing work for them, they don't scrutinize your Social Security number that much. They put it in there. If it bounces back, it bounces back. But when it comes time to pay out, if you're an undocumented immigrant and you go in there and you give them a fake Social Security number, guess what happens? You're going to be in trouble. And so undocumented immigrants do not collect Social Security. They do not collect Medicare. All they do is pay in because that's the price of them doing business. So they actually are a net positive. If you were to strip, and I don't know how you would do it, other than maybe to put the onus on employers to do it, and they will not, Republicans will not do that. They always pretend they will. But if you were to put the onus onto into employers, you would prevent undocumented immigrants from paying into Social Security. If you were able to do that, you would find that the Social Security Trust Fund would deplete earlier than it is set to now. This is just one of the lies that Elon Musk is perpetrating, that Republicans have perpetrated. And, you know, a lot of people have said, like, those people in the Jubilee video were completely ignorant. And largely, yes. I don't know how representative they are of everybody that age in the Republican Party. This thing shot out in LA. There's a specific type of people, and there's, you know, some of these people are a little bit thirsty, and but the ignorance about Social Security runs deep. And then when it doesn't, it's really just a problem with the idea of taxation. Now, there's a couple of things that I got to correct of myself in this video.
So what if Social Security should go away? That's my question to you.
Because Social Security keeps 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. And not only does it keep our elderly out of poverty, it's essentially a social insurance program that protects you if at the end of your life you don't have enough money to survive.
But right now, do you know that it's also the albatross around?
I should also add, Social Security disability insurance, something slightly different, helps if you cannot earn money. Social Security also provides for orphans and widowers and widows. So it across the board, but largely it's essentially a social insurance program for your retirement. All right, go back just a little bit. This guy thinks it shouldn't exist, and now he's switching to it's an albatross.
Wow,
it's an albatross. Again, not refuting that it keeps 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty, not refuting that by doing so also allows people his age and slightly older to not have to keep their parents out of poverty.
Real albatross.
This is so albatrossy.
Parents in poverty.
Go ahead. Program that protects you if at the end of your life you don't have enough money to survive.
But right now, do you know that it's also the albatross around our generation's neck?
No, it isn't.
Okay, so
let me just explain this.
Well, you're going to go back to lecturing me about Social Security.
Well,
we don't
that's
have.
What we're talking about. Social Security.
Social Security is one of the top 3 funded.
Social Security is almost the biggest thing that our government does.
Exactly, and we are more than $30 trillion in debt.
Well, first of all, Social Security cannot contribute legally to the deficit.
Because they don't even account it in the federal deficit every year.
That's correct,
we have
because
30
it's
years
self-funding. When Social Security started in 1936, you have more workers than retirees because people haven't entered into retirement. By 1970, it was at 3.5 to 1. Now it's at 2.5 to 1. They did a weird cut here. Which is, I didn't catch the before, but he's talking about we have a problem where there's a different number of workers per retirees. He says, do you know what it was when the program started? 450 to 1, which, yes, that's true. Because you had the first generation of people entering into retirement to qualify for Social Security. But again, by 1970, it was 3.5 workers to 1 retiree. And 50 years later, it is 2.5 workers for every retiree. But the difference over those 50 years is productivity. The amount that those workers can now produce and how much revenue they can generate has increased dramatically. But you say, how come we're going to have cuts? And the trust fund's going to run out in 2035, 2034. That's because of wealth disparity. But I'll explain that in a moment.
It was at 3.5 to 1. Now it's at 2.5 to 1. But productivity has increased during that time, so the amount of money paid into Social Security has been up there. The reason why we are running out of money just for the trust fund, not for Social Security, like I say, if we do nothing with Social Security now, it is statutorily unable to contribute to the debt. The math is right there. The reason why the trust fund is running out is because wealth inequality has hoarded so much money above the cap.
You don't think it's because the government does a terrible job managing their money? They have a huge spending problem, and they go, oh, look at all this money we have for Social Security that's earmarked for 60 years from now that we're just going to spend on something right now.
40 years ago, they predicted this. This is an actuarial table. Accountants sit there and look at it. This is a very easy math problem.
Accountants in the government are always right? That's totally the thing that you're saying? That they're always correct about money, right? That's why we have a $40 trillion debt problem.
Pause it.
Problem
First off, the idea, and I don't know, I may end up saying this, I don't remember this segment that well. The idea that it's the government accountants can't add, and that's why we have a deficit or debt, is so bonkers. Like, with all due respect to accountants, if all you're doing is sort of like saying, we have this amount of money coming in and that amount of money going out, we can't figure out that math problem.
Yeah, calculator.
No, it is because you have basically a Republican Party saying, well, that money that's coming in, let's not have as much of that. Let's give some of that back to the billionaires.
Let rich people have less albatross around their neck.
But we still want to provide services, and we still want to provide defense contracts, and we still want to privatize all these services. I mean, that's what's going on here. Good.
That they're always correct about money, right? That's why we have a $40 trillion debt problem.
The problem isn't the math with the 40 trillion debt problem. It's you have tax
It's
cuts.
the spending problem. I totally agree with you, which I would argue is part of why Social Security's gone in the hole already.
That's simply not true.
Oh, okay. So we're out of money from the Social Security bucket.
No. Statutorily, by that I mean by law, Social Security pays for itself. If we do nothing, the 6.2% that your employer and your employee pays into it will pay out 78% of benefits starting in 2033.
That guy is wrong. I don't know where he got this 78% figure, but I've noticed in other things around January, he was quoting 78%. The actual number is 83% it's going to pay out. I don't know why I got on this jag around that time where I saw 78% written somewhere, but I went and checked it. It is 82 to 83%. Now, again, that's the intermediate assumption. Things that affect this assumption is how well our economy does. If there's a big jump or drop in life expectancy, et cetera, et cetera. But it's closer to 82 to 83% of Social Security benefits will be paid out if we do nothing. Good.
To it will pay out 78% of benefits starting in 2033.
And why is it going down? If everything's so much better, why is it only 78%?
If we raise the cap, there's a cap right now at $176,000. So for instance, if you make $100,000, you pay $6,200 into that.
A year,
A year. But if you make $4 million, do you know how much money you pay into Social Security? $6,200.
And so why should wealthy people
Now,
pay a
pause it for a
higher
second.
percent?
That was also I was also wrong there. It really should be 6.2% of $172,000 that you pay if you make $4 million. A slight discrepancy. If any of these people or any of these right-wingers who wanted to take an issue, that's what they would say. But they would also still see that it's incredibly unfair that you pay taxes on the full $172,000, $176,000 you make under the cap. But if you make $4 million, you still only pay for the first $172,000 as opposed to the entire $4 million. Go ahead.
Why should wealthy people pay a higher percentage
No, they should pay the same percentage. 6.2 on $400,000, 6.2 on $1 million.
And why should they pay even more money at all?
Because
they make more money? Again, you fundamentally have this idea
progressive
that because
taxation.
you have an idea that because somebody makes more money, that's fundamentally wrong, right?
No, I don't think it's fundamentally wrong.
Sorry,
I think
you
that they should pay more taxes into it. Now,
It's amazing there because you're not actually even arguing for progressive taxation here. You're arguing for a flat tax.
Yes.
And what is the current situation is a huge tax break that it gives a sweet deal to the exact same
Social
people he's
Security
advocated
is a flat tax. Social Security payroll tax is a flat tax. And he just doesn't like the idea of rich people paying taxes. Now, maybe he's super rich, or maybe he just thinks it's wrong, but he also perceives it, and this is the thing that I think ran through a lot of these people. And this is the problem with this religious fundamentalism. It breeds an authoritarianism. It breeds a hierarchy and this notion. And to his mind, if you tax somebody, it's punishment. Why are you punishing the people who make money? Why do you hate them so much? Like their whole mindset, even if I don't think this guy's a fundamentalist, he might have been, but even if they're not, they have adopted this same mindset. And understand, religious fundamentalism is authoritarianism. That's what it is, right? You cannot. God sets down the law as communicated to you by your pastor or whatever it is, your priest or your Opus Dei, whoever it is, they pass it down and you do not question it. Now, if you happen to be one of the lucky ones, you're not the one who's being subjugated. You're a subjugator. But the whole religious fundamentalism is where the authoritarianism comes from. And the whole notion that you're punishing these wealthy people by having them be subject to the exact same tax as someone who's not wealthy would be. That's punishment.
Right?
No, I don't think it's fundamentally wrong. I think that they should pay more taxes into it. Now, I do think as a society, we should not allow billionaires. So for instance,
can pay more taxes generally, but why should
the highest tax rate was and the greatest expansion of our economy in this
does a billionaire get more money from Social Security if they went to go take it than I would?
No,
of course not. So why should they pay more?
I'll tell you what. Because it is a social insurance program that keeps you from being in poverty when you're a senior. And the reason why I think billionaires should pay more taxes than other people, even a higher percentage, is because it works better for society. The greatest expansion we've had in this country in terms of economics and the least amount of wealth disparity was in the 40s and 50s and 60s in this country. Do you know what the top marginal rate was?
It was high.
Do you know what it
I don't
was?
know the exact number, but
If you made over $470,000 in 1955, every dollar you would make above that was taxed at 90%.
So I have a question.
90 cents on every dollar was taxed above 470. So if we had today's dollars,
which is wild, by the way. But
and it's also the greatest expansion we had of the economy.
Yeah, you can expand for a time, and then you see places. You see like Nordic countries that were like, oh, let's tax the hell out of our rich people, right? And then they go, whoops, we messed up. We can't actually live off of our terrible. We basically are able to live off our economic boom that they had between like the 40s and the 90s, and then we have to revert all of that because we made a terrible choice and we were able to have a party for 50 years until we realized we ran through all the money that capitalism.
I would love to have a party for 50 years. Where do we sign up for the party for 50 years? And now it's just like
This guy would love Bill Clinton.
still sort of like a party, just not as big of a party. So we've gone 90 or 100 years. Incidentally, just for folks who are keeping track at home, this country is not even 300 years old. It would be pretty good to have a party for 100 years.
It was a party when wages tracked to productivity, and then all of a sudden stopped at the period this guy said people like Ronald Reagan realized, oh, we're doing the wrong thing with all these government
Once
expenditures.
neoliberalism kicked in, it sort of ruined the party, it sounds like.
That was us realizing we were on the wrong track. I think it was us taking the wrong route.
Go ahead.
We made a terrible choice and we were able to have a party for 50 years until we realized we ran through all the money that capitalism got us. So let me ask you real quick. So the average...
All right, pause it. Now you can see right there, I am literally, wait a second. You just said the Nordic countries had a party for 50 years by taxing taxing their wealthiest people. And it was a party that was brought to you by capitalism. Is he talking about the taxation there? I'm trying to
It's
just
weird.
figure out what half the time I have to say, and people don't understand. They cut out a couple of people who were completely just, I don't know what they were talking about. I literally sat there and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
You can tell that he only exists in propaganda, because why do you start talking about Nordic countries? You start talking about Europe, then it's not capitalism. You talk about the Marshall Plan and stuff like that. But America has a history where it was, like you said, way more productive. The economy was way more dynamic when rich people were taxed way higher rates.
This is the thing I noticed. This is the thing I notice about these people that I think may be a function of. This may be self-selecting, but there's a similar trait to all the libertarians that I've debated before. And that is they keep moving to sort of theoretical things on some level. They cannot stay in the concrete world. The guy who wanted to prove to me that religious fundamentalism and theocracy is better than whatever it is that I am, because in some type of hypothetical logic theoretical world, he has more basis for his morality than I do. Well, okay, dude, let's just decide on whether the country wants to subjugate women, whether we want to have a king, right? Because kings, that's what religion basically does, is it says that there are certain people who get the benefit of society. And maybe over time that spreads out a little bit, right? It goes from the king and the dukes and the whatever,
to the families,
the barons, to the families. And then, of course, once you get to the families, it's the men. Go ahead.
Capitalism got us. So let me ask you real quick. So the average person, right? Right now, they fundamentally look at Social Security, young people like me, and they go, I'm going to have that money sitting, waiting for me when I retire. Since your opinion is whatever works best for the average person is better, wouldn't you rather shift towards something that I would agree with, which is getting people that are 19, 20 years old into funding their own retirement rather than relying on other people to fund it for
You're
them?
talking like the 401k.
Sure. Well, not just the 401k, but for IRAs, any other type of retirement. Would you agree? Would we agree with that?
Social Security was set up as part of a three-legged stool where back in the day when I was a kid, we had defined benefit pensions where you know how much money you would get out.
Yeah.
That all shifted in the 80s to defined contribution where you know how much you put in. The 401k started during that Reagan era. It has been a disaster because the fact of the matter, for better or for worse, people just don't save in the way that you're talking about.
Why?
It would be nice if
the government were changing the mindset and actually pushing that.
Pause it. Now here's one of the big reasons that people don't save. Bradley, will you put up onto the thing, Google how much money, spare cash do Americans have? We have huge credit card debt, and that is because people don't have the money to fund their lives. This is the Search Labs AI. The median American family has approximately $8,000 in transaction accounts, including savings. The average savings balance across different age groups ranges from $11,000 to $60,000 in ages 65 to 74. Now, how are people supposed to be trained at age 19 and 20 to put put away, there's some people who are going to do it, but I suggest it's those people who can afford to save that. The vast, overwhelming amount of people who are able to save money in their teens, late teens, in their 20s, in their 30s, are people who come from a rich family.
The economy is structurally against working people. And when he talks about wealthy people versus non-wealthy people in this country are like CEOs and investors and people close to that. People who work for a living actually make the value in this country that it lines all of those people's pockets. So yes, they should pay a lot more in taxes. It should be redistributed to the people that actually create the wealth in this country, which is not investors and CEOs. It is the workers beneath them.
And again, even if it was possible, physically possible for 50% of for 100% of the population to be able to save because they have extra cash at the end of the week or the month or whatever it is. And it's probably closer to like really only that opportunity is only available to 50% at most, probably closer to 40%. They'd even physically could be able to do it. You're going to basically say to those people, if you didn't do it 20 or 40 years ago, cat food for you now that you're 65.
And you talk about albatross. Think of all the children of those people watch their parents die in dignity or with lack of dignity.
Incidentally, and this is a good point, Holtenheim says, if everyone saved a quarter to a third of their income for retirement, our economy would crash out like nothing we've ever seen.
Again, it doesn't work. People just saving and having savings, like people need to work for an economy to go.
Now, if you're working on the stock market, you want that money to come in to the stock market because then you make a ton of fees. That's why they want to privatize it. All that fees. Go ahead.
It'd be nice if
If the government were changing the mindset and actually pushing that cultural shift towards, we're not just going to hand you money when you're 65.
Now, wait a second. Now, these guys, again, they can't stand government overreach, but they want the government to fundamentally change people's mindset.
It's Grindset Month, brought to you by the United States government.
We had this situation 100 years ago, where there was no Social Security. And the government, presumably, unless he's talking about like having like some type of like one every day at 6 o'clock, everybody tunes into their TV and they get hypnotized into the savings mindset. If he's just saying like, you're on your own, everybody, we could go back 100 years and test this proposition. There's a reason why Social Security exists. It's because we did test this proposition and it was a disaster.
Uncle Sam wants you to start drop shipping.
And actually pushing that cultural shift towards, we're not just going to hand you money when you're 65. You have to plan for it right now.
We've had a 40-year experiment with that, the government affecting the cultural mindset, and it failed.
We've had a 40-year experiment of everybody. You know what my parents say? Do you know what grandparents say? They go, well, I'm just waiting for my social security check to come in, rather than I have $800,000 waiting for me because I thought about it when I was 19 and 20 because I didn't have this grab bag of money waiting for me. You're assuming that young people.
I try and tell my kids.
So we agree. We should get rid of Social Security and phase it out. Well, no. So we should phase out. How would you listen to this idea? You phase out Social Security to where people who have 5 years left before they retire get 100% of the benefits, and then people like me who have 40 years until we retire, I'm not going to get it.
Well, aside from the fact that he just left out like 35 years worth of people in between there. Again, we've run this experiment. And the reason why Social Security is so overwhelmingly popular is because his experiment doesn't work. There's no inhibition. If it is so easy for people to save 6% of their paycheck each week, month, whatever it is, why would it be difficult for people to save 10%? So 6.2% goes into Social Security. It's matched by your employer, incidentally. And then you do 4%, and you put that in the stock market. What's wrong with that plan? What's wrong with that plan? They don't suggest that. Apparently, it's just the first 6.2% is so easy to get people to save on their own. But then after that, it's some type of magic elixir, and you can't go past that. They don't suggest it because what they want is a Hunger Games situation. He just stated it right there. My grandparents are sitting, I'm waiting till I get to Social Security. Well, Grandpa, maybe you should be thinking about how you're going to be at a greeter at Walmart when you're 65.
Did he just say his grandparents have hundreds of thousands of dollars?
No, he said, wouldn't it be better if they had $800,000?
Yeah, economies don't work. Capitalism can't do that for people, you child. Like, it doesn't work like that.
Go ahead.
Me, who have 40 years until we retire,
Dude,
I'm not going to get it. I have to.
screw you.
I'm going to get screwed either way.
No,
you
you're
really,
not.
you really
No,
think
you're
I'm going to
not.
get Social Security someday?
I guarantee you, at the very least, you're going to get 78% of your benefit. 82.
That's awesome. I'll get $9,000 a year. That's great.
In calling for our government to increase the cap, in fact, get rid of the cap, then your grandkids will get Social Security.
I would much
100% of their
rather,
benefits.
and again, maybe we'll just disagree, but I would much rather result to, hey, 20-year-olds, please save for your own retirement, invest for your own retirement.
That'll
because
do
the
it.
government is bad at dealing with money.
And what'll
Don't
do it,
rely on them.
that'll do it.
What happens if what?
What happens if those 20-year-olds don't listen to you?
The same thing that happens if a 20-year-old just doesn't go and get a job because I
No,
tell them to.
no.
They're going to have a problem, but that's not my fault.
No, I got news for you. It's not your fault, but there used to be in New York City 30,000 people sleeping
No one
on
in
the
this
Bowery
was alive before Social Security. We've all lived under
he's so
this, just like
stupid about it.
And it
income
has
tax.
been the most successful government program in the history of our government.
Things that are
programs.
successful don't just start to die out and end up
not
in the
dying out.
It's the grab bag of money, the massive excess that was there in the early years because of the 42 to 1
No,
beneficiary.
there wasn't a massive excess in 1936.
42 to 1
Dude,
is
that was
a
just
massive
because
excess.
There weren't that many people who had entered into the Social Security program.
And the fact that
In 1970, it was 3.5 workers to 1. Now it's 2.5, but productivity has increased it. I've told you why the Social Security Trust Fund is running out. It is because of wealth disparity. Billionaires hiding and hoarding their money above the cutoff line, which is 176,000. That's the cap. If you
hiding
remove
and
the cap,
hoarding their money.
your grandkids
Billionaires aren't keeping $2 billion under their mattress. They're investing it back into.
They're just putting it into some stock market, or they're just looking around.
And what do
for
you think a
crypto
401k or an
whatever it is.
IRA relies upon? It relies on the stock market and things like
Yeah,
that.
a 401k relies on the stock market, and I knew people who were retiring in 2008 when the stock market tanked and they got screwed.
Well, that's a whole
But
other,
their
that's a
Social
whole other
Security-
problem.
No,
I would argue that's
that is
largely
the
driven by the
problem.
government
That is-
being, once
that
again,
is the
terrible with
problem.
policy and
That is
creating
the problem.
bad economic hazards.
Social Security is there regardless
I mean,
of what
I
happens with the stock market.
Okay,
That young man has
Voter.
one idea that his brain is geared towards at any given moment, which is that the libertarian things, I believe, aren't fairy tales,
Yeah.
which they are.
Yep. Wow. Well, I didn't
Just say you
realize.
love
I agree.
billionaires.
Huh? I didn't realize how much I got to talk about Social Security on that. I had forgotten about that. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.